Just in terms of VASP for me, that's all I'll talk about for the moment. I probably first came across VASP when I became an AP, I think it was 92. 92 at Bright P12, probably didn't have much to do with VASP for that year or two. And then 94, I think, became principal at Myrtleford Secondary College. And I remember going to regional meetings at Benalla. And at the time we'd have regional meetings with the regional director. And then afterwards we'd have VASP meetings. So the morning was the RD's meeting and we'd have VASP meetings. Brian, I'm not too sure if it was the same when you were at Myrtleford before me. And we would go to those meetings and I was just blown away because at some stage during those 5 years I was at Myrtleford, we had Robert Lamb there as the RD, the regional director. We had John Shreenan, who's one of our life members. Ted Brealey, who was at the time, I think, Secretary of VASP. And me as a young principal, listening to these three fighting away in the corners of these meetings, and we'd invite Robert to come to the VASP meetings. And the three of them, I don't know whether John and Ted particularly got on, but they'd be at each other and they'd be both at Robert in terms of his regional directorship and what was happening in education. But that kind of created some picture that VASP is important. I need to get in there. These guys are really talking up to the education department. Then I headed up we started creating networks of principals, and I was heading up the Wangaratta District Principals Network. And Anthony, I've still got a wind cheater from one of our conferences that you created for us when you were first starting out with your job. But Ted Brealey was on that, in that regional group, or network group. And many of you won't even know who I'm talking about now, but Ted was the treasurer, I think, of VASP at the time, and then the president of VASP. And he's fairly cantankerous in all sorts of ways. But that was probably the one meeting that I went to where Ted was always amazingly positive and brought to us, you know, what was happening in education and what approaches principals across the state were taking. And really gave us a good feel for what system we were working in, because apart from that, as principals, you tend to work on your own so much and work with your little team within your school that means so much to you. So that was really important to me. Then in 99, I moved from Myrtleford and won Co-author College P12, and I came to the city. And moving to the city, knowing nobody in the city, the notion of networks and collegiate groups is fairly difficult. So I gravitated straight away to VASP. And at that time, VASP was, had all sorts of little subcommittees as well. It was in a time when we had a lot more time on our hands, I suppose. And we had subcommittees in curriculum, in resources and facilities and 2 or 3 other areas. And that's when I probably first met Harvey, I think, too, because we were working together. I think it might have been the Resources and Facilities Committee. And so from 99 onwards, I've been involved in VASP in one way or another, first of all in those subcommittees, then on State Committee and Executive, and then as Treasurer of VASP, and then President-elect, and then into this role. And for me, the involvement with VASP centrally, and then also at the different regional meetings, has been an amazing support in my role, just as, you know, what are we on about? What are we here for? You know, how are different people handling the challenges that we've got from that point of view, but also to have a collegiate group to be working with, and thirdly, to be right up with what the department is doing. And that's where, you know, I've said around State Committee representation, people get onto State Committee and love being there because they hear the latest and greatest, and that's why it's important for people to be moving into those areas with VASP. So for me, VASP has been a huge, I suppose, support in my role as principal over the last 20 years or more. I think I've gained a lot from it. I've been wrapped with what I've been able to contribute to VASP along the way as well in terms of those subcommittees. I remember putting together work with Harvey and then also with some of the BPA people, Pat Waring and Kevin Mackay, you know, budget bids to the government and the like, when we were working really closely together on those sorts of things. And that was really positive. You felt like you were making a difference in terms of state public education. I think we certainly are these days, probably even more so in many ways, but the financial climate and the philosophical climate politically is not really helping the agenda for state education. But as I said, and I keep saying at our various meetings, the more that you get involved in your VASP groups and the more that the VASP groups and networks take on board that they can make a real difference in terms of education, but in terms of influencing your regional directors and through them the policies and processes within the department. I think it's just so important that people really get involved in that. That's the way I've felt over the last umpteen number of years since I've been in Melbourne and part of VASSP. And I hope as I move on, people keep asking me what I'm doing next year. Next year, I probably could go back to a school. They've asked me that. They've asked me if I'm interested in going to a regional office. Well, at this stage, I don't know about a regional office. And I'm probably going to be working under Sonia Sharp and with Stephen Fraser in the department in St Andrew's Place. But as to whether Sonia's still there on the night, that's another issue as well. So all sorts of unknowns for me next year. But basically what they're talking about in there is working with different groups that are creating policy and process that are meant to impact on schools, and that I'm meant to come and try and bring a school perspective to things and help roll things out in a better way. So in the middle of next year, when you get all this guff sent out to you, I had nothing to do with it, okay? Nothing at all. But hopefully I will continue to be involved in VASSP, hopefully over the coming 2 or 3 years, and certainly hope that from working from inside the department to also get VASSP and the professional organisations even more involved in helping influence policy and directions within the school. But I enormously appreciate this award. It's probably one of the best that I've ever had, and I think I look forward to working with everybody over the next couple of years. Thank you very much.